I know what I am, John. I am a fucker. I'm a criminal. I am a bad human being. I'm demented, John, in my flesh. I'm one of the, Jean-Paul Sartre said, I am the biggest sinner I've ever met. And I would say, no, I am. If you were on the road with me and I didn't have that experience where God took me blind and gave me sight, and you did something to me, I would attack you. I would attack your car. I would attack your wife. I would slit your tires, and I would consider myself in those actions good. I would take your wife if I could. I've done it to other men. I would do whatever my flesh wanted to frickin' do.
Yeah.
When he came in, brother, you became my friend and my neighbor. If there's not a God, I get nothing in my person at all to be considered enlightened, to be considered a good neighbor. There is nothing in Shawn McCraney's human soul that came into this earth that cares about good things. I don't care about good things in my flesh. You got to understand that. And so if there is no God, and we can prove there is no God, you enlightened guys, watch the hell out. Because guys like me are not going to make it easy on you. We are going to prey upon you. We are going to take advantage of you. We're going to feed ourselves. We don't care about your enlightened views, about being kind for kindness' sake. We care about ourselves.
The video clips you've just seen are of Christian pastor Shawn McCraney. I became acquainted with Shawn over the past year after watching his appearances in the podcast Mormon Stories, where he's discussed the reasoning behind his faith and belief in God. Shawn describes himself as a fucker, demented, a criminal, and a bad human being. When I first listened to Shawn, I wondered just why someone would refer to themselves in such terms. Shawn has also revealed that he is a diagnosed sociopath, an antisocial personality, but that his religious conversion has helped him overcome this condition and develop empathy for other people. In short, to grow a conscience. So, I reached out to Shawn and we began documenting his life story and transformation. We've recorded this long-form and comprehensive interview that covers all his life from early childhood to the present day. As you watch this interview, I ask you to try to imagine what it's like to live as a predator who took joy in hurting people, only then to grow a conscience and have to live with those memories. Shawn, growing up as a young child and a young man, when did you realize you were different to other people and how you related to them?
I think that most people think they're unique and that they have a destiny and that they have something special about themselves. So I naturally had that, but I think from my very first thoughts that I can remember, I just felt alienated from the world around me. It started to become more apparent that I was different and that there was something wrong, so to speak, when I would engage with kids in the neighborhood, and I would try to, or I would say things, or I would do things that I thought were funny or were acceptable, and that everybody else would join in, and they would be aghast at what I would do. And so when I would see the response from others, I realized, why is that not acceptable? Why is that not embraced by other people? And so I started then to consider that something was at least different. I didn't think wrong, but I thought different.
Yeah. Can you give some examples of these interactions?
Well, there was a preoccupation with sex from a very early age. Maybe, I mean, like I can remember maybe like 4 or 5, with anybody I met, male, female. And then there was that. So if that was broached, the subject was broached with others, that I could see either an instant rejection. So I wondered why they didn't relate that way. And then also specifically, like there was a Halloween and a woman on our street husband had died, and she put a bowl out on her porch with a sign that said, "Please take one," on Halloween night. And I said, let's take the whole bowl. And my friends were like, no, she's mourning. She's not here. And it was natural for me to just say, so what? Her husband died. Okay. I didn't think that. I just thought, let's just take the whole bowl. So that kind of, I always remember that. And then we had a pair of twins, Larry and John, who were blind from birth. And everybody catered to them. I would try to lead them into trouble. Like when it rained, I would take them and say, follow me. And I'd take them by the hand and I'd lead them to a puddle for them to step in their new boots, not their waterproof boots. And people found out about that. Like my parents found out and they were so angry that I would do that. I thought it was funny, but no one found humor in it. And so those things start adding up when you're very young and you just start to wonder, what is it? So it's things like that.
Did you have an understanding as a child and a young man of what empathy for other people was? No.
None.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew intellectually, you're taught empathy and your religion and your schools teach empathy. So intellectually, I understood that I should feel those things, but I don't think I had any empathy or feeling for another person at all and their needs, especially if those needs trumped mine. If they got in the way of my needs, I felt that I didn't even consider them. Yeah. And sometimes didn't even consider people human, just things. Yeah.
Do you remember when you first heard the word empathy?
Probably not until my late teens when I started reading French literature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a downside to living without empathy and a conscience that is liberating? Sorry, is there a side to living without a conscience that is liberating?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Watch The Sopranos. Look at Tony Soprano. I mean, if you have no empathy, you can do anything. And the world is your oyster. So it's a very, in this world, if this is a, man eat man, dog eat dog world, then having no empathy serves you to get what you want and be completely driven by your needs and no repercussions of conscience. That was my problem. It's like with the woman whose husband died or Larry and John, I had no conscience. I didn't feel like anything was wrong. And so it's very, very convenient in this world to not have empathy at all because there's no conscience that comes with it. And so I find it very, very convenient. Yeah. And you have to resist it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the downsides at the time of living without empathy, without a conscience? Were there any?
Well, I think what happened with me is I learned that when I was getting rejected by friends for actions or attitudes, I learned that I had to then make up for that with charm. So I started, the downside was I would lose friends. And, one day I remember specifically, had to have been about 7, my friends in the neighborhood all got together. I woke up on a Saturday. We always got together on a Saturday, and there was no one in the neighborhood. And in the 60s, that was huge. Where's everybody? And I started riding my bike around, and I finally went to a McDonald's, and they were all there, and I was not invited. And that, I responded to that with anger, and I took the dominant role in that, and I overtook the group and said, what are you doing without me? And then I brought them back in as my friends. But I knew that alienation was being introduced to my world because I was not pleasing people somehow. So I started to learn, okay, I have to charm them. I can't just be the alpha dog. I have to be charming too. And so the downside was you introduce inauthenticity to yourself. Because I'm acting charming, I'm acting caring, I'm acting like I want to do these things, but inwardly, I don't give a shit. I don't know if I can say that on our podcast.
You can say what you want.
I don't give a shit about what anybody is doing, but I have to pretend like I do. And that began this person that became me by the time I was 14, 15.
Yeah. And when you manipulated other people, was there a purpose to the manipulation?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was girls, it was always sex. Yeah, always. And or attention, devotion, and, you know, them being, you know, dedicated to me. If it was guys, it was for them to be my friends and to invite me and to hang out. But in the end, overall, the overarching thing was always, what am I getting from this? Not what am I? And I would do things for people to act like I was benevolent.
Yeah.
You know, so I could keep the facade going, like, oh, he's so nice. But it was never felt. It was always strategized.
Yeah.
And I remember purposely strategizing everything I said and did as a means to get what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask you, I know intellectually that's not right.
Yeah.
But don't most people do that to some extent? I'm asking you a
I
question
think
back.
to some extent, yes,
Yeah.
everyone does manipulate, but it's a matter of degree,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And they may manipulate, but they will feel something at the same time. So they may feel bad
I see.
out of doing it.
I see, yeah.
Depending on how much empathy they have.
No feelings.
Nothing. Yeah.
No. Never.
Did you manipulate out of a need to control others? Was there ever a need to control for control's sake?
It's like a more nuanced question than you might believe. Control, only in the sense that I wanted my way, but I didn't want to control people, you know, when they woke up and what they ate or what, you know, but I did want to control my wants and needs relative to the world around me. So in that sense, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see your behavior as manipulation, and how did you justify the manipulation to yourself?
I don't know if I saw it as manipulation in the way that that word speaks to us today, because it's such a negative word.
Yeah.
I saw it as, honestly, when I think about it, I saw it as them being too dumb to know what to do, to know what is best to do.
Yeah.
And so if I could get them to do it my way, they would be acting in what was the best way to do it. And it was really from an ego that was so, you know, enormous that it was just to get my way, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you feel any discomfort, whether it's intellectual, intuitive, or raw, visceral, emotional feeling, to your manipulative and predatory behavior?
Only if I was called out.
Okay.
If I was called out, I would feel shame and sorrow, angst, guilt, because I was called out and exposed, and because I was then diminished in the eyes of the person who caught me.
Okay.
So that was big. And but then it became poor me.
Yeah.
You know, oh man, you know. And so everything is about you, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, definitely.
Okay. How much did you experience fear, and what was the cause of fear?
Again, a double-edged sword. On some things I was fearless, where other people feared. Logically, reasonably, they were terrified by doing things where I was just without it. But on the other hand, I must have been greatly fearful of losing friends.
Yeah.
I think I was really fearful of being abandoned. I think I had abandonment issues. And so I feared, and I also feared not getting my way, not being invited to the McDonald's, not being seen as normal. So there were fears there. But if it was something like, you know, hey, will you go in and steal that from the store? Yes. Or I didn't fear like the law. I didn't fear anything like that. But I had inner fears that I kept pretty quiet.
And what about anger? When and how did you experience anger?
Anger was my issue, still my issue. Anger was central to my response of situations around me that I couldn't manipulate or control. And so then it really manifested itself with authority figures. because they were operating by rules that said you can't do this, and I would be like, fuck you, you know, I can do what I want. And that's when my anger would come out. So if I went to a place and it said you have to get in this line, you know, I'd screw you, you know. So nobody could control me when it came to that. And if they tried, my anger would come forth, and that included with my parents, especially when I hit puberty.
How and when did this anger result in physical violence?
That anger resulted in physical violence when I was probably, you know, 4, 5, 6. And it only escalated up until, you know, 2001. And as a man, the anger would just flow out if especially when confronted by someone who thought they had an authority to impede my way. Traffic as a driver, insane anger,
road
rage, fist fights on the side of the road, destroying people's cars if they wouldn't get out. I was the ultimate road rager, in the worst sense of the word. And unfortunately, my daughters were witness to this. So we'll talk about them, I guess, maybe later. But my middle daughter, who I took everywhere, she was witness to dozens of fights. And that hurts my soul because, you know, I think she thinks that's how a man should be. And that's not how a man should be.
What was it about the road that brought out such anger?
Someone felt entitled. When we've been talking, I've been thinking, really, I was a narcissistic person that had a God complex. I thought that I could force people into right behavior, and that they didn't know the best way to do things or the best way to think. And it was so entitled. So when someone else showed entitlement in front of me, if they cut me off in a lane, I was going fast enough, but and they came in and cut me off, then I would just respond with anger. What are you doing? You know, like I've never done that. You know, I could not see that I was doing the very same things that they did. And I still have a problem with that. I don't see that I am guilty of the very things people are doing to me. I have like we'll talk about later about how but I really have to say, wait, I've done that. And so when I do it, if I step in front of somebody and they honk, I'm just like, oh, sorry, you know. But if someone does it to me, I'm like, you're an idiot. And that impasse, it was so ridiculous in retrospect.
Tell me about when you first heard the word sociopath.
It was from my mom. I think I was probably 16, and I don't remember the setting or the day, but she said, I remember the words, Shawn, I think you're a sociopath. And I think I asked her, what is that? You know? And I to tell you the truth, I can't remember how she defined it, but it stuck with me. I mean, I was labeled with something. So, you know, with my personality, I'm like, okay, how do I manipulate that? You know, what can I do with the title sociopath? But this was back in the 70s. So I don't think people really talk, like today, everyone talks about sociopathy and pathology. Narcissism, big, but a little bit, but no.
Why did your mother give an example for why she thought you were a sociopath?
She did. She gave an example, but she made it up. And what she didn't give me an example from my life, but she gave me an example. She said, because when I said, what's a sociopath? She said I think she said something like,
what a sociopath would do.
What a sociopath would do. And she said a sociopath would walk into a room of beautiful women and they would go over and give attention to the maid. You see, because, and when she said that, I thought, that's probably right. To some extent, you find the one who's the weak one that you can get what you want out of easiest with the least expenditure. But at the same time, I would walk into a room of beautiful women and go after the best looking one. So I had both sides, but I know she was right in that when she said that to me, I thought, there's some truth to that. And it kind of stuck with me. That's the first time I heard it.
Identifying and targeting weakness.
Identifying and targeting weakness. But I have to say that, to be honest with you, Matt, in the revelation of everything, that my issue wasn't so much with targeting people I could prey upon. My issue was getting people that who were the highest level that I could manipulate. So my mom was right in the sense of the maid example, but I would also find great satisfaction and be able to get maybe one of the best looking ones to then come under my control and manipulation. That was more satisfying to my ego. So I wasn't just a predator on the weak. If someone was absolutely weak, I just was oblivious to their needs. I didn't know, but I didn't want to prey on them. I wanted higher value targets that would feed my ego.
When you were younger, were you interested in learning about other sociopaths and antisocial personalities in the media, books, films?
Oh, yeah. I read all about the serial killers. The first, I read about people who were dark crime types people, and they were my heroes. I didn't relate to heroes that were noble in virtue and value. I related to dark figures. So Batman was my favorite, but that was when he was still kind of an idiot before the Dark Knight. But and so I gravitated toward that in film, in art especially, dark themes in art and books.
Did you like anti-heroes?
I like the anti-heroes.
So the sociopath Emmy Thomas, author of The Sociopath Next Door, says that she had a very weak sense of self and identity, and she likens it to a cipher, a gas liquid that fits in everywhere, a chameleon that disappears when there's nobody around, or a hologram that has the right situations in which to appear. Is that relatable to how you felt as a young man, with a weak sense of self and identity?
A double-edged sword. In one sense, I never felt at home anywhere. I felt alienated and disconnected from the world. So I felt the need to manipulate people so that they would include me. But at the same time, I was so narcissistic and I had such a value of what I thought I was, like I call it a God complex, and I don't even know if that's psychologically correct, but I also felt like my way was superior. So that I'm a little bit different than her in that I felt like I have a place, I know what's best. So it's a double-edged sword again, very confusing because I never have felt connected. Connection to the world is very difficult for me.
But do you think you had too much self or too little self?
Too much.
Too much. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Adapting to society's cultural demands involves varying degrees of inauthenticity. As a sociopath, it requires a huge amount of inauthenticity. How did you cope with the inauthenticity that was required of you?
I didn't. I relished rebellion against cultural norms. I hated culture. I still hate culture. I don't like what it imposes upon us. I don't like its demands. It's part of the infringement upon your liberty as a human being. So when culture says you have to dress this way, look this way, I've always, and that's why I will speak, if it comes up, about the punk movement. That's where I really found identity, because they were antisocial, which, by the way, originated from the UK.
Oh, really? Okay.
You don't even know.
No, that's not my thing. Can you talk about the punk movement now and how you identified with it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have older siblings. I have 3 older siblings, and we cut our teeth on music. And so I going from my oldest sister, who's 10 years older than me, and music was part of our home, and I loved music. And I really started to find a home in the heavier, weirder stuff like Alice Cooper at the time. But when punk hit the scene in Huntington Beach, California, it was a cultural phenomenon. And I found a home there. I found a home in that it's really full of outcasts, misfits, people who can't find a home in the normalcy of culture. And so, Johnny Rotten from the UK, it's like, I am an antichrist. I am an anarchist. That's what he sang in 76.
Yeah.
And when I heard those words coming through the radio in the backyard of my parents' house, I became that became my identity. And I related to that darkness, that ethos, that way of seeing life completely.
Yeah.
So when I see the kids who are quote unquote punks today, I get what's wrong with them. They feel the same way I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to be an authentic sociopath? To be accepted as such?
Yeah, I think I didn't really think of myself as a sociopath, even though my mom had said that, but I wanted to be accepted for what I was by the world around me, as I was, and never been able to find it. I still have that need, and I still insist upon it.
Okay.
But I insisted upon it through manipulation then.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit less authentic than I wanted to be. But yes, I want to be loved for what I am. So I'm a heavy guy. I've always been. People have always commented on my weight.
Yeah.
Accept me as a heavy person. Fuck you if you don't like it.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. Accept me for the way I look. You think you're superior because you're cleaned up and look nice?
Yeah.
Fuck you. Everything was that.
Yeah.
Because I found in the people criticizing me nothing of value. I didn't think that they offered me anything. What would an attorney or an accountant or somebody offer me that I would want to embrace in my life? Nothing but money.
Yeah.
So I really hated that. And so being an authentic sociopath, probably that was my ultimate desire. Yeah, but you're not going to get that in this world.
Yeah.
No.
Can you talk about the self-harm protocol that you developed and why you felt it necessary, why you needed to hurt yourself?
Yeah, I think it developed when I was about 13, and it was a coping mechanism for the inauthentic expressions I had to do in order to get by with friends. So I could be a punk and I could be real the way I felt and the way I dressed and spoke and things with punks, but even they had, because I couldn't be a punk who maybe liked God too, right? So I would have to pretend that I didn't like God. Now there's a paradox. How are you a sociopath? I'm like, well, I was interested in God. So I had to bury that desire for God in me, so to speak. And that created angst. And I couldn't figure, I didn't go to a psychologist at that time or a psychiatrist. So that angst had to be released somehow. Masturbation would only do it for 20 minutes, and physical activity. Even though I was a part of water sports big time in Huntington, surfing, water polo, swimming. That could only do it so much. I think it was the inner turmoil I was facing that I started to burn myself and cut and mar my flesh.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a history of mental health disorders in your family?
The McCraney line came from Arkansas with my dad, Arkies. I mean, essentially, and I'm sorry, this isn't a pejorative term, I'm assigning it to our family. They were white trash. I mean, as white as trash as you could get with my dad. And my mom was a woman who wanted to not be white trash. Her parents were proletariats who worked in, dad worked in a retail store, and all the way up to retirement, a retail store, Bullock's Wilshire and Wilshire Boulevard. And they wanted to rise up from that image, but they came from a line of alcoholics, huge alcoholics. My dad's parents, he was an only child, both parents alcoholics, dropped dead. His uncles, alcoholics. My mom's parents, my grandma tried suicide. My mom had a nervous breakdown when I was little. I watched them haul her away, unable to stop crying. So there was a lot of mental illness that I could see. But I didn't know that it was.
Okay. Who was your primary caregiver when you were a child? Was it your mother?
Yeah.
Okay. And in that relationship, did you receive the love and care that you needed?
All conditional.
Conditional on what?
Her emotional state.
Okay.
So she would be there, very kind, very giving. And there were ways which she was relentlessly selfless. She would drive me to all the events I needed to go.
Yeah.
But there were other ways where absolutely conditional love. And it wasn't really based on my behaviors of antisocial or it wasn't based, she wouldn't necessarily reject me on that. In fact, she kind of liked that about me, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
She liked the gangster mentality. She liked a guy who was tough. But if I didn't please her, if I didn't make her proud of a shining light somehow, it was just unconditional. It was conditional love, and it was conditional responses all the way up till the day she died. That was my mom.
Yeah. Okay. Why did she like the sociopath mentality? I don't know. Okay.
I don't know. She would extol the virtues of men like the guy who established Las Vegas. I can't even remember his name.
I don't know.
Gangsters.
Okay.
And like we would be driving, and if somebody, and there's the driving connection,
Okay.
we would be driving together. I was nothing but, 13 or 14, and somebody would do something on the side of the road, go like this to her or something.
Yeah.
She'd stop and she'd say, "Get him."
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I became like a henchman
Okay.
for her. And I distinctly, I can see the place and time when that actually happened, where I got out and I pummeled the guy who did the thing.
Okay.
So she liked that masculine get him thing. So, and that would make her proud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
You talked before about abandonment issues. Were there any moments in your childhood that were formative for you and may have helped to form your sociopathic traits?
There were a couple things. I don't know if they're related, and I don't know if they absolutely contributed, but one, and this is very sensitive. My parents are dead, but that's okay. That because they're dead, I can say this. I was young, and our whole family had gathered together for some sort of holiday, and I came out for her to change my clothes, and I was stripped naked in front of the whole family, my aunts and uncle, and I had an erection, and she hid it with her hand. And she said, "What's this? What's this?" And everybody laughed. And I ran into my room and I laid on my bed crying. And she came and said, "Get up. There's nothing wrong with you." That was scarring to my person. I remember it distinctly.
And how old were you then?
Oh, God, I feel like I was, in the house we were in, I feel like I was 5, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, real young. In that same house, she and my dad were having trouble. And she would have fits of anger and rage and wanting to escape. And I understand my dad was quite the jerk in some ways. And so she said, "I'm leaving." And I heard that, and I ran to the door of the house and put my back against it and said, "Don't go, don't go." And she grabbed me by the hair and she took me and banged my head against the wall and said, "Get out of my way." And those two things, when I think about them, they played into the makeup that I embraced as I went on. Not normal, but I had to consider where she came from, cause and effect. I do that now. I had great anger toward them as the years went on. I was searching for years as a tortured Latter-day Saint. I didn't fit the prototypical model in externally. I did. I looked like I do now. I looked like a missionary, and I obeyed the rules, and I did everything I could. But inwardly, the way I explain it is I was a sinner. I love sin, and I loved women, and I love drugs, and I love getting high, and I love fighting, and I loved all these things of my flesh. And Mormonism didn't have the capacity to change me as a human being. Even though I went on the mission, married, did everything. Mormonism said, "You do this, and hey, man, you're going to be okay." But inwardly, I knew I was a fake. I was a phony ass human being as a Mormon. That construct did not work with me as a human being.
You were raised as a Mormon in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for all of your childhood and most of your young adulthood. How did your belief in God coexist with your predatory behavior?
More angst. But honestly, Matt, I could see through the facade of religion by those men, and they also represented a type of man I never wanted to be. So I also didn't care.
You're talking about the Mormon hierarchy.
Yeah, the bishops who would call you in and try to counsel you and things. It became more of a game of how could I charm them, make them laugh, and manipulate them, rather than really caring about their opinion of me, because I didn't think that they had anything to offer.
Okay, because you perceive them as inauthentic?
Both inauthentic, and I thought in my mind, I didn't know it, but I thought, you're just as evil as I am. It was just a natural thought. I thought, you're capable of doing what I'm doing. You're just trying to tell me I shouldn't be doing it because it's your job. Yeah. And so it was pretty cynical. I did meet a few leaders in the LDS church who were more authentic and seemed to be genuine men, and I did relate to them, but didn't usually trust any of them.
Okay. What did you mean by you sensed they were capable of being as evil as you?
I don't know. I believe that people are, I thought that the world was like me. And if I could look benevolent and good and kind and funny and charming, and then behind the scenes go home and do whatever I was doing, then I thought, you're the same way. I just didn't think that they had any different in their makeup than I did. Yeah.
What did you understand as sin at that time, and did it include causing harm to other people?
The Mormon Church is good on teaching what you should do, but I never really embraced sin as being unkind or mean. I embraced sin always associated with sex. Or drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, or alcohol.
Okay, so disobedience to Mormon rules was more sinful than hurting other people?
Oh, by far. Within the Mormon church, yes, by far. Yeah. Okay. You would be, if you got in an argument with somebody, like, for instance, the Mormon church has basketball courts. They have fights in those things almost weekly between all the members. That's acceptable. Screaming, yelling, and they'll be like, well, he kind of lost his temper. Nothing there. But if somebody on that court went and said, I think the prophet's an idiot, gone, right? That would be a carnal sin. So I could see that. So I didn't really embrace their view of sin, but I did feel guilty, a little bit guilty for my preoccupation with sex.
Okay. There are teachings in Mormonism about caring and loving other people. Why do you think Mormonism was unable to instill care and love in yourself for other people?
Well, today I see it as being impossible because their approach to it is through law. But that's a theological discussion. If we're just looking at pragmatics, I think that they are incapable of teaching of really instilling true love to another person, because they use a counterfeit source to bring that into them. They use their rules. They use obedience. For somebody like me, rules didn't mean anything, and obedience meant less. So I was never going to become loving the way they wanted me to be, kind outwardly. And then, but I learned to be kind outwardly, but inside I didn't care. So it was really a big conflict.
Okay, what did you mean by they used a counterfeit source?
Their counterfeit source, in my estimation today, having done what I've done in what I do, is that their source is their prophet would tell their people how to be good and right. And you do that by obeying their litany of rules. And so when I would apply those teachings, so to speak, they never worked with me. Just because they say, do this, do that, do this, and you are going to be okay, doesn't make you okay. And so I could see that. And so it failed me greatly. Any church, any religion working on someone like me at that time that says, do this, do that, and you'll be okay. To a narcissist, or to whatever I am or was, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. There's no internal change. It's external. And so I was just gone as a member of that church.
Yeah.
It works well for people who can be governed by rules, who have conscience,
Yeah.
and they think the prophet's telling them the truth on what they need to do to be holy. That might work,
Yeah.
but not for me.
Okay. And as a young child and young adult, did you believe 100% in Joseph Smith as the prophet?
A child, no, but I came to believe Joseph Smith as the prophet on the mission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever discuss your issues showing love and care for other people with figures in the LDS church?
I tried with a few bishops to get deep.
Yeah.
No, they're not equipped. They don't know how to engage with somebody who is questioning about, well, why do we need to do this to be right with God? It's just do this and you'll be right with God.
Yeah.
Why is not a question you ask men who aren't trained.
Yeah.
They're just not equipped to handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Emmy Thomas, author of Sociopath Next Door, she is a practicing Mormon, and she describes the LDS Church as a sociopath's dream. It enabled her predatory behavior with a path to becoming God and providing her with people to prey upon, but it also restrained her, this behavior, with a set of rules and standards. For you, how much did the LDS Church restrain versus enable your predatory behavior?
It restrained only in the sense that I knew what I needed to do to get by and to get my way. So I could appear to be doing everything right, but it did nothing for changing me as a person. And when the rubber met the road, I would do what I would do, and nothing they were going to say would stop me unless what I did would cause me to be further alienated from the culture. So it was a game of manipulation and inauthenticity back and forth, which is why the self-harm increased.
Okay. And what level of power did you acquire in the LDS Church, and how did that affect you as a person?
So appealing to my charm and my abilities to communicate, I was raised to the highest level in the mission, assistant to the president, which is the highest missionary level, and I was that for 2/3 of my mission, which is usually because I was able to speak and be charming, and I played the rules. So then to answer the other side of that question, it was perfect because I could then be seen as the guy, and I was thinking I was the guy with my God complex. And it was all based on inauthentic expression. So it's kind of this perfect storm of craziness, but you don't realize that at the time. You actually think you're moving up in terms of God and his favor. In terms of, as an adult, I was in a bishopric. I was a seminary teacher several times, stake high council, and young men's, all of those things. But every time I got into those positions, the inauthentic life that those people were doing relative to the way I saw life became overwhelming. And I would almost always crumble, and I would always have to be released because I wasn't doing it the way they wanted.
Okay. And at the time, did you see the LDS Church as a hunting ground for prey, or did that come later?
I saw the hunting ground, oh my gosh. It was like a fruit market, and I had a basket when we were kids, because you're 13 to 18, you go to a stake dance, you know Mormon doctrine, you use that to your benefit to get girls. And they are so naive, you know, and good. They really want to be good, and I really mean that. That they will buy into the lies of, I feel like I knew you before. And to them, it's like, bing, bing, bing. Maybe this is the one, you know, and they're all of 16 years old. So I could use the doctrine and the ways that they taught things to my advantage to have all the sexual dalliances that I wanted.
Okay. Where does this naivety that you find among Mormons, where does it come from, do you think?
I think it comes from the top-down authoritarian. We know the truth. You don't have to think. You know, Boyd K. Packer, LDS Apostle, when the brethren have spoken, the thinking is done. And so when you live by that and you don't ever learn to think, you are like a lamb to the slaughter. It's easy to manipulate those people. And that's why I think in Mormonism there is so much business larceny and all this, because they're all taking those poor people who are just trusting men and saying, you know, hey, here's this new London Bridge we want to sell you.
Yeah.
Are you interested? And they're like, yeah. I'm not making fun of them.
Yeah.
I love them as a people. I really do. And they mean, so many of them mean well. But those idiots who are underneath the veneer of Mormonism, man, they're there and they are bad. Yeah. And I think it's in the leadership too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that goes to my next question, which is that in authoritarian cults and high control groups, these are led by an antisocial personality, and often what's observed is that the narcissistic and sociopathic traits spread like osmosis from leader to followers. Have you seen that in the LDS Church? Is it a thing?
Constant. It's a major theme. And how that works, Matt, is they elevate those who are the most controlled, the most successful in business, and who outwardly, aren't doing the things that guys like me are doing. So, but those guys, they are probably the most duplicitous and the most predatory, but they have learned to disguise it well. So when those leaders are walking about you in the stake and at the highest level, and you look at them, you want to be like them. So you start to speak like them, and they're sing song lilt at the general conference, and you see other guys get up and try to and dress like that and look like them. You don't see this in the hierarchy. You'll never see this in the leadership, right? So you start to relate to how they act and present themselves. And but what I did was, for me personally, you didn't ask this, but I would say, you're a fucking phony. You're a phony. Underneath that, I don't trust you. So it kind of served me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
You would say that, or you would think that?
No, I think it.
Okay.
Yeah. I started saying it later.
Okay.
But when I was younger, I would think it.
Okay.
For instance, I'm sorry I'm belaboring this,
no.
but a bishop, he asked me, do you masturbate? And I got to the point where I say, do you? And his face went red.
What did he say?
He said that we're not here to talk about me. I said, well, why are you asking me? I mean, I know what's in your mind. And you are acting like you can ask me that question. I told my mom that, and she laughed her head off.
Okay.
So
how much do we know about the LDS senior leadership and how they interact with their subordinates? Are there reports of narcissistic and abusive behavior from the top down?
Well, you know that in 2006, I started a ministry, television ministry. And in that ministry, we had many people come to us with stories. Now, they're hearsay because I never was witness to any of them. But they would say, I am telling you I was there. And then also, and so they would report this approach to life that was just ruthless. In Thomas Monson, he walked in the Joseph Smith building when it wasn't completed yet. These guys are laboring to meet their deadline, and he yelled, heads are gonna roll. And I hear that and I'm thinking, he's the president or prophet of the church. I knew a pharmacist who used to fill his prescriptions. He was a complete ass to the lower level. Where's my why am I waiting? He's so entitled. I've heard many reports of the upper leaders from the apostles' first presidency just being outright dicks. Just interpersonal dicks and wanting order. I met the secretary of the first presidency who's since left, and she talked about the conditions of work at the highest level of the church, and it was everything, the way she said it was, had to be perfect. And that is just unconscionable in this world.
Okay. So mostly psychological abuse, humiliation, shame.
There's stories of sexual stuff. I don't know the truth of them. But all of it is psychological. None of it is physical like you might find in Scientology or something. There's no hitting or any of that. But there is psychological warfare going on constantly from the top all the way down to their bishops and stake presidents who have bought into it.
Why is there no physical abuse?
They're too smart.
Okay.
They're too smart, man. They operate by great cunning. And they know how to not get caught. So I think it's one of the most, one of the most insidious expressions of religion, because they are so smart, they're so legally minded, and they know what they can and can't do to protect themselves.
Yeah.
You'll never see one hitting somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah. Darn it.
How much causality do you attribute to your childhood upbringing versus the LDS Church for helping form your sociopathic and predatory
Kind of a
traits?
marriage.
Okay.
Kind of a marriage. I think the Mormon Church helped me be an acceptable narcissist rather than a obviously malignant narcissist.
Okay.
Had my parents not joined the church, and they joined it so that their children could have some foundation from their East Los Angeles upbringing, they wanted the church to take over and give us structure.
Yeah.
So because of that decision, I was able to learn how to be a better predator than a one that was like headed for jail.
Yeah.
Immediately by the time you're in your teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk about when you first reached out to the mental health sector for support? What led you to do this, and how was your experience with mental health professionals?
It was in marriage. Okay. Marriage is what started me on the path to some sort of recovery. And I say marriage, it was to my wife a little bit, maybe when we first got married, but it was mostly once we started bringing children in.
Yeah.
And when we started bringing children in, I started realizing, man, I am way off course. And if my children really saw what was in me, I would really start maybe to feel like some shame.
Okay.
And so in that, I sought professional help through first psychiatrists. Then I found a psychologist who recommended me to a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. And when I first sought professional help, I walked out of the offices of probably 4 or 5 psychiatrists.
Okay.
Because for various reasons, but all of them failed to live up to what I thought was reasonable.
Yeah.
You know, one of them was like, well, I want you to read a book called Seasons in a Man's Life. I was having affairs.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm having this, right? Because you have to sneak. It's inauthentic.
Yeah.
You have the church. That's the worst thing you can do except marry. So I got this going on. And so I go to them with this angst because I'm starting to hurt myself more.
Yeah.
I'm drinking to hide my pain.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to justify it. Read Seasons to a Man's Life.
What Seasons to a Man's Life?
I don't know. It's some book
Okay.
because he said it will show you that we go through these phases as men.
Okay.
And I'm like, fuck you, you idiot. Yeah, we don't go through phases as men to have relations with extra women hiding.
Yeah.
Don't lie to me. And so it was that kind of psychiatry that was like, you're just as bad as the Mormons who are saying you can never be this way. What is gonna fix me, you idiot? When I found the psychologist, she opened me up to some things that helped.
Yeah. Were you ever prescribed medication for
Yeah.
your problems?
And it was like a decision. I remember where I was, Fairview in Orange County, holding the Prozac.
Yeah.
And it was like the red pill or the blue pill in the Matrix. I was like, this is going to alter my world. Do I do it?
Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And I took it.
And did it alter your world?
It altered my world in that I would only have 1 or 2 fights a month instead of 8 or 10.
Okay.
It altered my world, and I didn't. I calmed down with my family.
Yeah.
But it didn't alter my predilection for women or for manipulating others.
Okay. But were you prescribed the Prozac specifically to reduce your violence?
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
That was the word they used.
Okay.
It wasn't depression.
Okay.
It wasn't to treat sociopathy. It was anxiety. And they sensed that I had anxiety because of the self-harm.
Okay. But did they expect it to reduce the violence when they prescribed it?
I don't know. I think they did.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It would calm me down. And my response to an anxious situation, like somebody in traffic, would be abated. And so I would respond better.
Okay. So you were given this diagnosis of sociopathy formally in the 1990s.
Yeah.
At that time, how much did that diagnosis help you understand yourself?
Not much even then.
Okay.
But it did. What it did was it was a second witness. My mom said it decade earlier, whatever.
Yeah.
Then I hear it from a professional, and I start to think, what is this about?
Yeah.
And then I really started to see myself as having no empathy for anybody and being selfish. Just as a jump ahead, my wife went to see the same psychologist I was seeing,
Okay.
and she was saying he's so kind, he's so loving, and she said he's the most selfish person you've ever met.
Yeah.
So she's been so supportive, but the psychologist had to point out, no, this
Yeah.
guy is a manipulator, and brought it to her attention.
Okay. So you received this diagnosis of sociopathy. Did you share it with anyone, with your wife or with your family?
No, what I would do with Mary is the only thing I would say is I'm disconnected. I'm not connected. I don't feel connected.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I would express it. But I never said I'm a sociopath.
Okay.
No, I never said that.
Okay. In 1997, you had a roadside experience which changed you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Leading up to the day in August of 97, I had affairs. I'd been abusing Oxycontin. I had been drinking secretly to where I'd get so drunk I'd pass out, and so no one would know I was drunk. And my work was the job I was doing. I was suffering. I was on the Stake High Council at the time. I would self-harm.
Yeah.
It was just a dead end. And I was intellectually, I was what I call myself a nihilist.
Okay.
I didn't believe really in anything. And I was really, really down. And so people could say, well, that's why you had this roadside experience. And I would say, you're right. So my wife asked me to go pick up our daughters from a gymnastics practice in a neighboring town.
Yeah.
And as I drove to that, I turned on the radio, and I didn't listen to Christian radio at all. And it was on a station. Charles Stanley was the preacher, and he asked a question over the radio to the audience. He said, if you could get yourself right, why haven't you done it?
Yeah.
And when he asked that question, it hit me so hard, because I did the mission, I married in the temple. I tried to be obedient.
Yeah.
I was playing the role, the facade, but nothing worked.
Yeah.
Nothing. I tried drugs. I tried alcohol. I tried affairs. I tried intellectualism. I read every book you can imagine, and nothing was coming through. And so I listened to him, and he answered the question, Matt, and he said, the reason you haven't done it is because you can't.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard that in my life. All I had heard is that you can do it. Pull yourself up. You're the man. Play that Mormon thing.
Yeah.
And when he said you can't, I continued to listen, and he said that's why Jesus came. And he came to do what you cannot do.
Yeah.
I had never understood that with all the mission, teaching, seminary, everything. So I listened, and he said, take your life, ask God to receive you.
And he asked me if I wanted to take this challenge and offer the sinner's prayer. So cars are whizzing by on this highway, and my kids are going to get out of gymnastics, and I decide I'm going to do the sinner's prayer. And so I ask Heavenly Father, that's how we pray as a Latter-day Saint, Heavenly Father, I'm a sinful man, and I can't get over myself. No matter what I've tried, I can't do it. Heavenly Father, will you forgive me for my sins through Jesus Christ? Jesus, will you come into my heart? Jesus, will you take over my life? Jesus, will you guide me from this point forward? I will do anything, Jesus. I will do anything if you will do this. And I'll wait for you to do it. I promise you I'll wait. Now, I have to admit, I hoped that when I had opened my eyes and said amen, that a miraculous thing would occur, and the heavens would open and light would shine upon me, and I'd be a completely new guy, but I wasn't. Nothing happened. Nothing changed.
And so I thought, another failed attempt at finding something.
Yeah.
And I drove to the gymnastics practice, And as I waited for my daughters, my mind reflected on events of my life. And when I opened my eyes and they had come out of that gym, I had radically changed in my mind and heart, because I realized spiritually, metaphysically, people who deny it, it's okay, you can deny it.
Yeah.
I knew that I couldn't do it, and that Jesus did it for me, and that he really did accomplish for me personally, what I couldn't do. And when I had that, I was released from the burden of all my fears, all my actions. Maybe this was the great escape. Maybe this was the ultimate drug. I admit that's possible, but it served what I needed. And I was, boom, changed inwardly at that moment.
I was born again, a new creature in Christ. I was given a new heart. I was given a new perspective. I was given new power to change the things in my life.
You've spoken previously about this roadside experience and how it reminded you of 3 memories.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those 3 individual memories?
While I waited for my daughters, I went like this just now because I was laying back in my car. They're inside the gymnasium in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and the first thing I came to was I was about 9 years old. I was in the shower. My mom was at the store. Nobody was home of my siblings.
Yeah.
The phone rang. I got out. I had a towel. I answered it. There was a man on the other end. He had a speech impediment of some sort.
Yeah.
I thought he might be, he won't say retarded anymore. What would he say?
Disabled?
Disabled.
Yeah.
I thought he might, well, we said retarded back then.
Okay.
And I thought he might have been retarded.
Yeah.
And he said, I want to talk to you about Jesus. You know Jesus? I'm like listening to him. I'm like, yeah, I know Jesus. And he said, can I pray for you? I said, sure.
Yeah.
And that guy started praying. And it was like he prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And I was so embarrassed. One, I was naked, but I had a towel around me. But I was on the phone. I didn't know what to do with this man. I felt like it would be rude. So my bravery wasn't there that I established later.
Yeah.
I just listened to him. He hung up. I heard my mom come into the kitchen with groceries. I could remember the bags. I went into my room, and that memory came back.
Okay.
Second memory was I got off my Mormon mission. Mary and I moved to Logan, Utah, or actually Richmond, Utah, to live in one of her parents' houses. And I was working at a gym there, and I came out on the pool deck, and there was a guy with a mullet, and he was the only one out there, and I was cleaning the pool. That was my job. And he was reading a black book, and I said, you Mormon? And he said, I used to be. And when he said, I used to be, I said, oh, that was fighting words for a returned missionary in his arrogance and his narcissism. So we started going back and forth. I'm telling him, you couldn't live up to the commandments. You couldn't be obedient.
Yeah.
He's throwing stuff back at me that I didn't even listen to. But he got up to leave, and he said, someday you're going to know him. And that came back to my memory at the time. Yeah. The irony of that, Matt, was that my wife and I and my in-laws were traveling through Logan at the time. Yeah. And we went into a McDonald's, and Mullet Man was working behind the counter.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, see what happens when you leave the church. You become a counter man at McDonald's. He was a little bit older.
Yeah.
That was my attitude. That's what the LDS church put in me on how to see others who worked behind the counter at McDonald's, who had left the church especially. And then the third, by the way, I was going through the airport when I was doing the television show here. Yeah. And from the back, those guys who sit in the chairs and they don't let you enter as you're exiting at the airport. From the back, I saw him. I said, I know that's him. I passed him. I said, have you ever lived in Logan? Yeah. I said, let me tell you what. I told him, I don't remember. Didn't remember. And he was working in TSA at the airport, and humble guy. Sitting there, probably had his Bible in his car. Yeah. The third memory was I had worked at a bank as an investment officer, and there was a girl there who was a Christian. They knew I was Mormon, and she was leaving to get married, and she left a letter on my desk. It didn't attack Mormonism at all. It just said, I want you to know how important Jesus is to me in my life. And I took that letter, and that weekend I shared it with what's called a temple prep class in the Mormon church. And it was full of kids. And I read that letter, and I thought they would be touched by it. Yeah. No, they used it as a cause for attack and ridicule and mockery. And these were just teenagers. And I was kind of stunned by the response. I didn't say anything to them then. That memory came back. Then I opened my eyes, watched my daughters. And that's when I had that change within me that was otherworldly.
Okay.
Yeah. Came home and told my wife. She's like, yeah, like French literature and like existentialism and like this and drugs and yeah. Poor lady had been through hell, right? But I knew it was real.
Okay.
So that's what changed me at that day.
Yeah.
At that moment of putting an operating system in my heart and mind that I could use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Selfless sacrificial love is what I've learned through my belief system, which I wasn't able to garner from any substance, any philosophy, or any religion. That's why I stick to it. Now, I'm not saying you can't be selfless and full of sacrificial love. Anyone who's a parent knows what that's about, and I'm with that. But that's the thing I would be looking for. It's can you love selflessly? And I am not able to love selflessly. I put myself ahead of everybody without that influence. That's my message.
Yeah. That's fascinating to me. Okay. As you're describing selfless love, the synonym that came to my mind, and I don't know if this is the case, was empathy.
Sure.
Is that the case?
Sure.
Did that event that happened that moved you into the stage 3, or currently where you're at, did that event help you develop empathy for other people?
My God, it's unfolded empathy in my life. I never could relate to anybody's troubles or pain. I did not have any empathy before. And I have become empathetic toward the plight of everybody, any problem. That's what he's done for me in my life. That's what I think he's done for me in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because I'm thinking there are people who don't have the ability to empathize with others.
Yeah.
Antisocial personality disorder.
That's me, brother.
There are people that can't put themselves in another person's shoes.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding that that's an attribute of your brain, and it's not something that you can suddenly start doing, I don't think. Can people who don't have empathy learn to have empathy?
And here's where I would step in and say, I'm sorry, but through Jesus, Jesus changed my life from being a full-blown narcissist to being someone who now actually has empathy. And I can tell you that's true.
Part of these religious beliefs often come with a penalty if you don't believe it. And you didn't even mention this at all. But I'm wondering if one of your motivations for staying with it is the concern of being tortured for eternity or anything like that?
No, I don't believe in that. I believe God is love. He loves all people, whether they believe or not. He is complete love, and he loves them without or with belief. So it has no fear in me.
So there's no fear motivation that's also driving this desire to become more empathetic or something.
It's gratitude.
Like that.
It's gratitude.
It's gratitude?
Yeah. There's a gratitude in me for the change I had at that roadside experience that said, you are such a selfish jerk. Start looking around, buddy. Wake up. And so I started to wake up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the time leading up to the roadside experience? Were there any particular events that could have caused the roadside?
Well, I would have to say there was 36 years of events.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was stockpiling events.
Okay.
And I didn't know, I didn't have a way to release those events. Psychiatry and psychology and Prozac, nothing was releasing those events and setting me free from them. Mm-hmm. And so I was still operating by them. And so all of those things led up. Now they escalated and increased in their ferocity as I approached that day. So by the time I got it was like the snowball had reached the bottom of the valley. I was in the middle of it, and that was it. I was cold, dead to the world. And the way I say it is I could have driven off. There was a bridge you crossed to get to the gymnasium. I could have driven off that as well as gone to get them. I was that low.
Okay.
So all of it contributed to the state of mind that I was in, which was low, broken, and really finely seeking. Before that, I think I was trying to feed my mind as a way to get better and stronger, or religion to get better or stronger, or drugs or whatever, or women. But none of those things worked. This worked.
Okay. You said before you were a nihilist. Did you ever, or have you ever lost your belief in God, in a creator?
Not in a creator.
Okay.
But I did think that he was he, she, it, whatever, was an indifferent bastard, an absentee manager, and that there was nothing that was important between it, she, him, and me.
Yeah.
But I did not let go of the idea that there was a supreme being. And for some reason, I've always believed that, right or wrong. And that is what has been something that's been central to my life.
Yeah. You said before that at the roadside you had a thought, "You're such a selfish drug, wake up." That's a feeling of guilt. How could you feel guilt without feeling empathy at the time?
I think it was just intellectual. You know, I had the facts of what a selfish prick looked like.
Yeah.
I think having children helped bring something out in me, maybe in combination with the Prozac and the counseling.
Yeah.
I think those things help open my eyes to the fact of what unconditional love looked like, because I unconditionally love those kids.
Yeah.
I didn't unconditionally love my wife. That was very conditional. But I unconditionally love those kids.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me get to the point where I was then ready and broken to hear what I heard.
Okay. Can you tell us about your transformation following the Roadside Experience? How did it change you, and over what period of time?
I'm really glad you asked that question because of where I am now, but this is a misnomer among the world of Christianity, and that is when you become or receive God through Christ in your heart, you become perfect.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
It's a categorical lie. In fact, you still remain a really pathetic human being.
Yeah.
But I knew in me that he was there.
Yeah.
Because I knew he was there, I didn't think there was anything else for me to do or be.
Yeah.
And so I continued to be an ass.
Yeah.
And yet I was a Christian ass. And I had affairs.
A born again Christian.
I was a
ass.
born again Christian ass.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't equipped with anything but the knowledge that there was someone who cared about me unconditionally.
Yeah.
And because he cared about me unconditionally, I was of the mindset, well, I can do whatever I want,
Yeah.
right? So he'll love me no matter what I do. And that was kind of given to me by some people later in the faith, that he loves you unconditionally. And I really believed that and knew that within me. So I didn't have any sort of ability to resist my natural inclinations. However, I did start to feel bad.
Yeah.
And so when I would do something, I would think, I know they say he loves me unconditionally, but so if that's the case, why am I doing this? And that grew over probably 4 years.
Okay.
Where I was still lost. I didn't know. I was still LDS.
Yeah.
I was a born again Mormon. We wrote a book called that.
Yeah.
And but I still had my flesh, but inwardly I knew. And that's a distinction I think that's so important. Because you're not going to find saviors as Christians. You're going to find usually people who are pretty messed up. Yeah.
People who need it.
Who need it.
Yeah.
And I admit there are people who ostensibly don't need it. I think they will realize that they did need it to some extent once their narcissism falls by the wayside.
Yeah.
But the people who really need it, and this is what Jesus taught. That's why those who have much sin will love him the most.
Yeah.
Because he took, and that's what it was for me. Yeah.
Okay. In 2009, 2010, you took the HARE test for psychopathy.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to take it? How did you take it? And what score did you get?
Yeah. By that time, I had been doing a television show for 4 to 5 years. And I had been in the public, and I was like a local celebrity. And I started to think, I'm getting attention. What am I really? And I just learned online about the HARE, a test for psychopathy. So I can't remember how many questions. I think then it was about 30. And you had a score online. And so I took it as if I was Shawn McCraney without having that roadside experience.
Your former self.
Former self.
Yeah. Okay.
And I scored, I'm just making this up, like a 28 out of 30.
Yeah.
in terms of being a confirmed psychopath. But then when I looked at those results and I compared it to what I had become,
Yeah.
it was night and day. I was scoring maybe like a 6 or 7.
Okay.
And so I knew that I had found something that worked for me. And I actually tried to contact them. I sent them a letter or an email and said, hey, I have a solution that works with this. I scored this. That used to be me, but I got nothing back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if the people running the HARE study are watching this,
Yeah.
Sean's reaching out to you again.
Yes, let's
So
talk.
You'll be receiving a letter in the post.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you find it particularly difficult to develop empathy?
Yeah.
Following the roadside.
Yeah, because, oh man, that is such a good question. Another thing I would like to make clear from my estimation, and that's after decades of studying the scripture, I have to choose empathy every day.
Okay.
My lack of empathy has not left me. I still, in Shawn McCraney, born in Whittier, California, am a fucker. And I like to say it that way without any hesitation, because given the right circumstance and given my inability to choose to do what I know I'm supposed to do, I will fuck you up.
Yeah.
And I don't do that much anymore. And I choose empathy much more now than I ever did, but it is a constant daily choice.
And it's a conscious choice.
It's a
every day.
conscious choice. I am faced with a situation, and I know much more strongly now the way that Jesus would do it. You know, what would Jesus do? I hate that, but that's true. You know, what would he do? And so, like Martin Luther said, be Jesus to your neighbor. So every time I'm confronted with something, I have to choose to be Jesus to my neighbor out of love for him for what he did for me.
Yeah.
And when I do that, that tool, and I mean that as a tool, I used to think, Matt, that when you became a Christian or you were a good Mormon, that God overwhelmed you and you became a puppet, and you didn't even have to think. No way.
Yeah.
And so what happens is those who really are grateful for what he's done choose daily to die to themselves and to love like he tells them to.
Yeah.
That is not understood. And so people who act like something else, I would question that thing. So daily I am we had a recent engagement with a woman who was ill, who needed a ride.
Yeah.
My initial thing was, screw you. Screw you.
Yeah.
Yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, not screw you, Shawn.
Yeah.
You're not the guy who gets to choose this. And so I, like within seconds now.
Yeah.
And so that's how it has developed. And so it has developed, and it's stronger and it's better and it's more present with me. But if I give it a few days, weeks, months of inattention, the gnarly guy comes back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for the audience, the lady who was ill was on the Greyhound bus with me, so this just happened 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So.
And I had never met Matt.
Yeah.
And he
in
came out
person,
from the Greyhound bus, which right there, a Greyhound bus in my world's like, what? And it's 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
He comes up, Shawn, there's a woman who needs a ride. And I'm like, who are you? You jackass? I'm up at 2 in the morning. This is all milliseconds.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this is Homeless Central, milliseconds.
Yeah.
And then she comes around the corner and she's black. Milliseconds. Sorry, this is the reality. All of this is happening. And then at the same time, I have God in my world, in my mind, saying, Shawn, shut up.
Yeah.
Just shut your ugly, fat, grotesque mouth and love the way you claim you're supposed to.
Yeah.
With that operating system in me, I said, Matt, what do you need? And you say, we need to take her to the shelter. So we did. Yeah.
Okay, that didn't show at all. So.
No. And in the past, and what religion does is it makes you see the person doesn't want to do it, but they'll do it. Okay, you know, we'll do it, Matt.
Yeah.
You know, and that's called religion. I have learned to let him bring it through so that there is no inauthentic expression. It's real from my heart in honor of my God.
Yeah.
And that is what I think matters.
Okay. Now, having grown a conscience, how do you feel when you look back and remember the people who you hurt? What do you feel now that you couldn't feel then?
I understand who was hurting them, but I still am responsible for the pain I've caused. I don't think I can escape that. And so I have a heart for the pain I've caused deeply, going all the way back to the girls I was messing with in first grade.
Yeah.
And I so what I do, Matt, is sometimes I will think about the people I've hurt and I'll pray, you know, please bless them and help them and forgive that. And there's a principle within the faith of helping God make all things aright. And so my contribution to them, because they're long gone and I don't even remember names sometimes or what I did, but when they come to my memory, I will pray that God will bless them and help them and erase the damage that I've done. If it does anything, I don't know.
Okay.
But that's the best I can do in addition to trying to live better now.
Yeah. Did you ever try to reach out to any of your victims to apologize?
Yeah, I've reached out to many people over the years and done that. And I reached out to a woman a few years ago, who I engaged with in 9th grade. She came from a bad home and I took full advantage of her.
Yeah.
And I reached out to her and called her. And she said, you know, my life was pretty messed up for quite a while after you.
Yeah.
But I'm better now. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Okay.
And so that I did. Her name was Karen. And I don't know really if it really did anything, that physical reaching out.
Did anything for you or for them?
I don't know if it did anything really for either of it, because I think that healing really is spiritual.
Yeah.
So the mechanics of actually doing that, I don't know. Maybe it helps, but I the only way I could reach out was that. I felt particularly bad about her. I felt particularly bad about a few others that I have really put through the ringer over the years.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to hold yourself responsible for your past actions, given that you couldn't care, you weren't capable of caring or feeling?
I was incapable of feeling, but looking back, I feel like I knew I was hurting them.
Okay.
But I didn't feel it. I just knew it.
You mean intellectually?
Yeah.
You knew? Yeah.
Intellectually, I knew. I think I really fucked them up is the way I would put it. But I didn't feel it, right?
You didn't care?
Didn't care.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a strange dichotomy there of am I responsible or am I not? Cause and effect. You know, how much did all the things in my upbringing do?
Yeah.
But where I do feel ultimately very responsible is for how I treat people now and in the future.
Okay.
And that I have an imposing responsibility to try to do it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your greatest regret in life?
Boy, that's a good question, man. I have so many regrets, Matt. If I look back on them, I think my greatest regret was deceiving my wife into marriage, without her knowing who I really was.
Okay.
And then playing the role, bringing in children into this world, giving her hope that I was somebody I wasn't, and manipulating her, and then I would have to collectively throw any single woman I've ever had an extramarital alliance with. Those are my regrets.
Yeah.
The reason is my children know about those.
Yeah.
And I think that has done more damage to those children than anything else.
Yeah.
And because girls have a real need for dad to be a good man, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And they held me up as a good man because I was a good dad.
Okay.
And then when that house of cards was revealed, I think it destroyed them in their hearts in a way that can't be. It's hard to fix that, man.
Yeah.
I know God is there to help. really hard to fix that when you've done that kind of damage. And I know that, again, it's selfish because it's my children. If I really allow myself and think about it, I've done that to other people's children.
Yeah.
I've ruined their hearts.
Yeah.
You know, and I've caused many people to go off into very bad ways of life initially. And I know it's not just me, and I know it's cause and effect, but those are my greatest regrets. Looking back at the harm I've done and the ripple effect that it has in the world. And I really can't calculate how bad that has been, even though I've never been I've been put in jail, but never went to jail for anything like that. But my heart breaks for the pain I've caused in other people's lives. My heart doesn't break for the pain I've caused God or Jesus on the cross, because they unconditionally loved me and did what they did because they wanted to.
Yeah.
But these people were preyed upon, even down to my children, my wife. And you can't take those ripples back. You can't do it. And that is brutal, and it keeps me in a place that I need to stay, and that is humble and broken. And I don't have the right to flip somebody off in the car. And I don't have the right to challenge authority. I don't have the right to do these things to people. That's not me. And so I feel bad when I've done it. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional, but that really strikes a chord with me. That was a great question.
Okay. You want to take a break?
No, no breaks.
Okay.
Authentic.
To what extent do you think you should take ownership and credit for your transformation?
None.
Zero?
Zero credit.
Why?
It's like, how can a pig take credit for being a pig? and then deciding, because they have been equipped with a way to live life, to put on a tie.
Or isn't it more like a pig becoming a human?
Put on a tie. That's big. How can a pig feel proud about being given the tools to stand up on its hind legs and walk about, put on a tie, and become a citizen? I'm a pig. Right? And so I have nothing. I tell people there's nothing in me, and it's really important to me in this discussion to know, and I've tried to make this apparent throughout our ministry. Don't look at me. I am a jerk. And if you think I'm something and you want to thank me, you have no idea what I could do to you or your family if you crossed me and I didn't have Jesus. And by the way, this is irony, is that when people who mock faith and do that in an acerbic way, in my mind, I'm saying, you have no idea how Jesus is protecting you right now. And I know that's kind of a crazy, psychotic way of thinking, but it's true. He has brought light instead of darkness.
But it was a struggle to change.
It's a daily struggle.
So can you not take credit for that struggle, for the effort that you put in?
The only thing I can say is I have chosen to allow. Okay. So a drug addict to crack who chooses to allow Narcanon or whatever it is to help them, that's the only credit they can take. Okay, that's it. They have allowed. And that's the only thing I'll say. I've allowed. Why? I don't know.
Okay.
But I've allowed it.
As you learn to be compassionate towards other people, did you also have to learn to be compassionate towards yourself?
I've always been compassionate, inordinately compassionate toward myself. That was part of my problem. I felt like I deserved compassion and good treatment from everybody. Throw flowers at my feet. I'm God, you know? So I don't feel that. No. I do understand the need to let go of what you've done in life in order to grow as a person. So that compassion's quote unquote, I will allow myself, because you can't wallow in the mire, using the pig analogy again. I don't know why. You can't wallow in that place. You've got to move forward. But when I move forward, I say him instead of me.
What situations now do you find it most difficult to show empathy towards other people?
I'm excellent in Christ, I say, but I've always been okay in showing empathy to the people who need real help.
Okay.
So,
like, for example,
someone who's psychotic, schizophrenic,
Yeah.
I can spend all day with them because I have a heart for them, because they are truly, but as you move, that's the polarization.
Yeah.
That's the in one end. But as you start to move into homelessness, I start to have to resist judging them for being there.
Yeah.
It's their fault.
Okay.
What they do, I forget cause and effect. And then as you move up the line, I become very, very resistant to people who are entitled.
Yeah.
And and this might be part of my sickness, but people who walk about arrogantly and feel entitled and have that attitude, I have to resist them to chop down a few notches. That's my problem.
Is that because they remind you of your former self?
I think, yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the facade of religion
Yeah.
and of corporate America, and that we hold up our CEOs as something, or even like our rock stars and actors. I used to really be, hold all of them up. And now when they start to feel entitled and they're living lives of luxury, nobody is more reprehensible to me in my mind than Martha Stewart. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. But if I met her, I would be kind, loving, and I won't speak evil of her. Sorry, Martha.
For the audience, who's Martha Stewart?
She's an American woman who makes everything beautiful. Everything is beautiful, flower arrangements, and it's all the world. It's all presentation. It's all facade. She did time for and that was really revealing Martha Stewart. She did time for stock manipulation and insider trading, but we forget that. We look at her flower arrangements and her linen that you can buy at Kmart. I don't like corporate authorities who present them, or religious who present themselves as superior. What I do is I look at them compared to Jesus. And I say, he had no place to rest his head. He was probably like the most homeless person we've ever met. He was not attractive. He had nothing to offer. That I can relate to. But because of him, I have to treat those people at the higher echelon with love. And that is what I've learned. That's my biggest struggle, to have empathy for them.
So do you find it easier to empathize with victims of harm or the victimizers of harm?
Always with the victimizers.
It's easier to.
Yeah. Because the victims, I often feel like they were stupid and they deserved what they got. The victimizers, because I was one, I relate to them better and I have more understanding. So if a person, we read that a man, he imprisons somebody or he kills somebody, I have a heart for that man and I want to go to the prison and reach him. The person who is dead, I see in a scope of eternality, and I feel like God loves them. They're okay. The family who's remaining, okay, I feel a little bad for, I get it. But my empathy is really more naturally toward the criminal.
Okay. In addition to empathy, has your overall palette of emotions grown wider? For example, self-expression, self-purpose, satisfaction, loyalty, devotion, disappointment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But in a different way too. Exponentially changed, but it's also morphed. It's morphed from being all about me to now being all about either him or the other. And before it was all about me. And I could be emotional and I could cry and I could do those things, but it was all about me. So yes, it has changed, but it's also morphed.
Some pro-social sociopaths say that establishing an emotional bond with other people takes them an extremely long time. Is that the case for you? Do you take a long time to trust people?
I don't trust people.
Why?
I know what people are about. So I've learned to never trust what they're capable of doing. And in that way, I'm able to love them unconditionally. They can never disappoint me when I realize they'll speak badly behind my back. They'll do whatever things people all do, except you. And we will, so when I don't put people on a pedestal, but I keep them where I think we all are, I'm able to love them. And when they disappoint me, I don't get angry or hurt because I realize they're capable and I can forgive them.
Do you mean you realize they're capable of predatory behavior or just letting you down?
Letting me down and doing things wrong. And so what that has given me is an ability to have that empathy for them, or sympathy, one or the other. And to give them not a leash, not more rope, but to give them more and more chances to overcome the thing that they've failed in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still get surprised every now and then.
By what? By
Somebody who as somebody who I might have allowed to be a little bit more trustworthy in my mind,
Okay.
who will show what I've always known.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But typically speaking, I just don't trust what people are capable of doing. Yeah.
Okay. 4 years after your roadside experience, you saw excommunication from the LDS Church. Why?
I had been raised in the church. I've been taught the church's things. The church told me that I had failed. The church told me it was my fault. The church told me it was the authority on earth. So I figured, well, if I ever decide to go back to this church, if I discover it's the only true church on the face of the earth, I want to go back fully on my own accord. So I requested to be excommunicated so that if I wanted to be rebaptized, I could choose to do that rather having it put upon me as a kid.
Okay. But were you seeking a permanent departure from the church?
No, I was really just trying to say, I deserve what you have always taught I'm worthy of, excommunication. If I decide to come back, I will come back and be baptized because I asked to be.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not going to be in anyone else's power.
Okay, so you were excommunicated.
Yeah.
Why did you not choose to go back to the LDS Church?
I got a library card. I started to learn.
Okay.
And I had started years before, to be fair.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason why I left. But all you have to do is look online. If you seek and you want to know the truth about all religions, just look at the underbelly and you can, you'll make your decision not to join any of them. Yeah.
Okay. So your transformation coincided with the roadside experience and a departure from the LDS Church. To what extent do you credit your departure from the LDS Church and its authoritarian environment with easing your narcissistic and sociopathic traits? Was it healthy to leave?
I think that the humility brought on by an excommunication in the Mormon church would serve as a facade. It was the roadside experience that made my heart humble before God.
Okay.
And I knew that I had a direct conduit to my maker through that experience rather than having to go to men, have men make me feel humble, come back with contrition, prove it, and then reinstate me. So all of those factors kind of played in to my decision to say, I don't need any religion or any human being to come between me and my maker. I'm okay. He received me as a reprobate at that gymnasium. There's not a man or woman on earth who can say, you need to do this. You need to be that.
Okay. How has your understanding of sin and harm evolved since you've shared Mormon teachings?
Since I've shared Mormon...
Since you've got rid of.
Greatly. For me, it was perfunctory.
Okay.
Go to the bishop. He tells you what to do. You do it. You're then reinstated or you're okay. Now it is virtually today almost automatic.
Yeah.
I make phone calls. Once a month I'll make a call or two to people that I think I've offended. I say, you know what? I think I said something. I did something that may have been... sometimes I don't do that if I don't think it's necessary, but for growth, but I will often apologize immediately, and I sense immediately when I have done something selfishly toward another human being. Before it was perfunctory.
Okay.
Oh, it's hot in here.
Yeah.
Are you dying?
A little bit. I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah. So you no longer see sin as part of Christianity. Can you talk about that? Why, according to your interpretation of Christianity, is sin no longer a thing in your world?
It's illogical to believe that if Jesus did what the scripture says he did, suffered for the sins of the world 2,000 years ago, then sin is over with.
Yeah.
And what that does in the mind of a person, it allows them to see somebody who doesn't live like they live as non-sinners. And so what that allows you to do is to love them and accept them.
Yeah.
So where, like a Mormon, under the law, I would look at a gay or anybody and judge because they were failing. But now, if sin has been wiped off the table by Jesus dying Nobody is under sin, as the Christians try to teach, and everybody has been freed from that. God loves the world. That's why he gave his son. So I have no right to judge, get angry, or treat somebody badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you understand as the greatest harm now? Is harm to other people the greatest form of harm, as opposed to harm to yourself or harm to God?
I see life as the amount of time that we are given. I see harm as the abstraction of life from a person.
Yeah.
For instance, you work a week and you buy a bicycle.
Yeah.
With that money. That was your life that you expended to buy that bike.
Yeah.
I steal that bike. I've sold that week of your life because I've taken what is yours.
Yeah.
So the harm done by us today, God isn't saying, I tally that up, I tally that up. He's paid for it.
Yeah.
But we choose to harm people by stealing life from them.
Yeah.
Murder is the ultimate. You take their whole life.
Yeah.
But every gossip is mean because you have to then work to fix the gossip.
Yeah.
So all things can be kind of sized up in my mind as stealing. And that's why I got so emotional when you said, what's the worst thing you've done?
Yeah.
Because I think of the amount of life I've taken from people
Yeah.
by the things I've done to them, and they've spent trying to get right.
Yeah.
So when just me alone, when I decide to do something that's harmful, I have to see it as I'm stealing life from other people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that stealing of life is the greatest type of
The
harm.
greatest type of harm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to ask you this because some people won't believe you.
Yeah.
Why should we believe you? How do we know you've changed?
I can only cite the ancient text I trust.
Yeah.
And the only reason you should ever trust that I have had a change
Yeah.
is not my words, not my teachings. It's by my life.
Yeah.
So if you don't know me, you shouldn't judge me.
Yeah.
You shouldn't deny it or accept it. Okay. But you should go pursue your own way to see if that is effective for you.
Yeah.
If you know me, you should be judging me by my love.
Yeah.
Love is a verb. It's not words. It's action.
Yeah.
And it's time given by one person to another because that's life. Right? So when you see somebody willing to give time
Yeah.
in a nice way to another person,
Yeah.
you can say, well, that's kind of an indication that, and if I don't follow up with trying to manipulate you from having done that, like we don't go back to that woman that we picked up and I go back and say, hey, I gave you a ride, how about some sexual favors?
Yeah.
Sorry. That would
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not predatory. It's sacrificial.
Yeah.
Love, insufferable, long suffering, and time given, life given. That is how you'll know if my claims are true. If you know me, if not, trust not a word I say, because if you trust me, you might trust somebody else on YouTube.
Yeah.
No, test all things for yourself. Subjective, independent assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a constant struggle to retain your current self and not to relapse into your former self?
Constant, no.
Okay.
But when I first had the experience, it was 4 years of not even trying. After that, it became a battle. And today, there's still a warfare, depending on circumstances.
Okay.
That can change me. As recently as a month and a half, 2 months ago, I was confronted by something. And after a lot of stress and no excuses, it's my fault, and not being as tied in as I thought, I lost my shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just showed me what that does is it shows you you're no different. You are still the same. And so I reiterate that, I'm not different as a man, Shawn McCraney.
Yeah.
So don't trust me, but trust what I suggest is something that you can use as a tool to help you operate better in this world.
Yeah.
And I suggest it's supernatural, spiritual, and inward. Yeah.
Are there any things that have remained constant between your former self and your current self?
Sex is, I'm a sexual person.
Okay.
I always am attracted to females.
Yeah.
And, most females. And that has been a battle. And I think that's a battle for a lot of people. I also like to get high or drunk I can't because of health reasons anymore.
Yeah.
But and even as a Christian who was deep in the word that tells you don't get drunk with wine, I felt freedom in my relationship with God directly that I could still get drunk. I don't mind that if it's within reason and I'm in control.
Okay.
But I would see those as failures of my flesh. I like to eat.
Yeah.
I eat my feelings. If things get really stressful, it's taco time.
Yeah.
That is something that my flesh relates to.
Okay.
And so those are things that are in my human physicality that call to me.
Okay.
I try to walk by a spiritual man now rather than the fleshly man.
Okay. So binging on the pleasures in life is a
Binging,
constant.
huge. At the extreme is a huge. Now that has been diminished and it's been taken in under better control, but it hasn't left me.
Okay.
Yeah. And violence hasn't left me either, but that is in a much better control than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This metaphysical epiphany helped me to personally believe that there is a God who's interested in his creations. Now, that's my experience. I don't say you have to have it or that my experience was even legitimate. I just say that's what I've had. And then I've pursued that stridently, ardently over the course of the past 20 years and have discovered it to grow into something that's beneficial to me in my life.
I want to understand like how you concluded that this stuff is real and true.
Epistemologically, the beliefs I have, I don't think are true. I place my faith on them because I don't think I have a handle on the truth. So I could be wrong.
Okay.
So epistemologically, I don't say my beliefs in this and this and this are true. However, what I do believe is true with a capital T is like the guy in scripture, I have to quote it, where Jesus heals a blind man and the Pharisees say, you know, what happened? He said, I don't know. They said, well, do you think he's the Son of God? He said, look it, I was blind and now I see. That's what he said. And that's what I say. I was a fucker and now I'm not as much of a fucker. So if that's the reality for me, that's truth with a capital T. I don't impose it on you. I love you. We party. We do what we want. But for me, that crutch works as a truth with a capital T. And you would see and experience that in our relationship together.
Because you have these views, and they're contributing positively to your life, that's good enough for you to think that it's true.
It's good enough for me to personally accept it as viably true in my life.
Because you benefit from it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have tested it. It's not like it's
Yeah.
some new, I'm not new to it.
Right.
I've tested the hell out of
And
it.
the test would be like back when you didn't think that it was true. I guess you didn't have a nice life back then. You were
No,
struggling.
and no one did around me either. Even worse.
Yeah.
I didn't, and neither did they.
Sure. Okay, so there's something unique about this belief that you think that you need to have it, and because it serves its purpose, that's good enough for you to think that it's true.
Right.
You.
For me, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I can say, for me, this is true. Can you prove it? Oh, hell no. I walk by faith.
Yeah.
Well, how do you prove it? Well, all I can say is I was once blind, now I see. I was once a jerk, now I'm nicer. You know, so that's how I prove it. You know, I don't have anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you be missing? What specifically do you think that you'd be missing if you did start to doubt and wonder about the belief?
What I would be missing is what I personally consider a metaphysical support that can't be proven that's within me. That is, I believe that I have a presence of God, not special, anybody does, who acquiesces to faith. And I've acquiesced to faith. That's an acquiescence. It's not a reality. It's not true or known. It's what I believe. I acquiesce to that faith, and that sustains me in my walk metaphysically. Maybe you can walk without that. I need it. I need that faith in place because I've tasted it. I know what my life is like without it. And if I don't have it, there's a loss. There's something within me that is sorrowful. Perhaps that, and maybe you might say, well, you're coming to reality with the hardness of life, Shawn. That's fine. I can accept that could be true because I walk by faith. However, I need it. And so I always will say, That's me. I take it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want the crutch.
You need faith. Yeah. You need faith, and you're calling it a crutch, but I'm wondering how difficult life could be for you if you started to wonder if your belief was true or not.
Well, I have wondered, and sometimes I wonder still. You know, you have to think that you've got some things wrong. What happens, Anthony, for me, is the crutch of my beliefs sustains me in my walk in this life. Without the crutch of my beliefs, I become that guy that I was as a Mormon.
Have you seriously entertained that is exactly what would happen, that you would find yourself struggling again if you did begin to doubt? Does that question make sense?
Oh, yeah, I think the question makes sense. And the reality is true, because as I have wandered over the course of the past, however many, 20 years, and I've sojourned into realms of doubt where I've sort of pushed some things aside, what the Christians call the former man quickly rises up in me. And I disconnect in my mind from the things I was holding true, and I begin to act on myself without those truths. And it's an ugly scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I think I'm hearing is that your behavior could change significantly if you didn't think that these claims were true.
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, maybe that's psychosis. Maybe, you know, I have the mental issue that I need these things in order to keep me in line. And maybe it's a reality or not. Maybe I could be a good guy without it.
This is what I'm wondering.
Yeah. But come live with me. Ask my wife. Ask my daughters. Ask my family.
Right.
Like, Shawn, when I interviewed with you a couple years ago,
yeah,
I think you said to me something like I would kill a dude on the side of the road if I didn't have a belief in Jesus. I'm not trying to misquote you.
Yeah, no, you're about right.
Yeah.
If there's not a God, I get nothing in my person at all to be considered enlightened, to be considered a good neighbor. There is nothing in Shawn McCraney's human soul that came into this earth that cares about good things. I don't care about good things in my flesh. You got to understand that. I'm demented, John, in my flesh. I'm one of the, Jean-Paul Sartre said, I am the biggest sinner I've ever met. And I would say, no, I am. I don't say that out of false humility. It is my lot. If you were on the road with me and I didn't have that experience where God took me blind and gave me sight, and you did something to me, I would attack you. I would attack your car. I would attack your wife. I would slit your tires, and I would consider myself in those actions good. For the faith of the broken, the lost, the reprobates, those people who don't have the intelligence, who don't have the serotonin levels, I'm a criminal. And it's not a joke. You can interview my wife sometime and talk to her, or my children. I am a bad human being. And so if there is no God, and we can prove there is no God, you enlightened guys, watch the hell out. Because guys like me are not going to make it easy on you. We are going to prey upon you. We are going to take advantage of you. We're going to feed ourselves. We don't care about your enlightened views, about being kind for kindness' sake. We care about ourselves. That is where Jesus comes in and does something that's so radical that it took a guy like me and changed me to do the good you talk about. You naturally can do. I cannot do it. It's not rhetoric, John. I am a fucker. No, it's true. And so this is why I am so deeply committed to the thing that happened to me so many years ago and have consistently been committed to it. I know what I am, John. If you cut me off and I didn't know you and didn't have the change in me, I would pull over to the side of the road and we would go at it. You know, I would take your wife if I could. I've done it to other men. I would do whatever my flesh wanted to frickin' do.
Yeah.
When he came in, brother, you became my friend and my neighbor. And that, I just can't turn from that.
What's your level of confidence that you would literally become a monster if you didn't try, let's just say, a fourth way? Let's say there's a fourth way.
Yeah.
What's your level of confidence that you would become a monster by leaving a third way for a fourth way? That you have to have believing Christianity as a way to make yourself a decent person.
The difficulty in answering that question is because I've passed through what I've passed through to make me what I am right now. If I abandon that, I'm sure I would be more mature. I would be more rational. I would use more logic than my impetuous hormonal self of years gone by. But I know that, or I believe that the whole within me would only grow into more darkness. And I think that I would be sad, at least, at the loss of what I have now. I think I would.
So what I hear you saying is you're certain that you would grieve.
I'm sure I would grieve.
You're certain that you would grieve the loss of Station 3, let's just call it, of believing Christianity.
Yeah, for the same way I can say I would grieve if my wife died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would, because it's a partnership, it's a relationship I'm in with this unknown being. And I believe that I would grieve that as much as I would grieve my wife passing away.
Sure.
Yeah.
That empathy, in your view, would be compromised, or that, what was the term that you used?
Could be compromised.
Yeah, that term, that could be compromised. Could be compromised.
Yeah.
Not would be, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Your ability to empathize for others could be compromised if you didn't attribute that event to this higher power.
Right. I think that's my belief system.
Yeah.
But if you can bring something to the table that would make me more empathetic than I've become, I'll inject it.
If there was a better way to prove it or to show that it was actually true, would you want to know?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Like psychologically, and, is it medicine I need? And is it this and that? Would that science bring me out into further light and knowledge? And I would be able to say, well, God isn't necessary. I've realized that the genetics of my makeup have all it needs is a little scientific tweaking. And I take the medicine and suddenly I say, wow, I don't need God at all. Sure. I'll go down any road you can offer me. But I have to preface it with none of the things I've tried in the past. From religion to study to medicine to alcohol to drugs to aberrant sex, nothing has given me the vision that the blind man received. And that's what has made me so determined to do what I do.
Interesting.
You've described your belief in God and Christianity as a crutch. If you lost this belief and you no longer attributed the roadside event to God, would you revert to the person you once were?
Because of what I've experienced in my life,
Yeah.
I am, and because of what happened just a month and a half ago,
Okay.
I am certain of it.
Okay.
Now that is disputed by people, and they say, no, there's some other things that you can do, Shawn, that will replace it. But I would say those things are failures, so screw those things. If I discover my roadside experience is just some thing that isn't based in what has really worked, and it's like I'm hypnotizing myself,
Yeah.
and there is no God. Look out, I'm going to become a drug pen.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there is no God, doesn't that mean that you did that all by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would not be authentic to me.
Why?
Because I know myself, what I'm like.
Yeah.
So while I might be able to say, well, yeah, I am a better guy, this guy is still alive. And it will become a question of who is going to reign.
Okay.
And if I find out that this was an inauthentic thing that I kind of did, and it didn't really happen,
Okay.
I would probably say, I'm not going to spend time reading this book anymore,
Okay.
teaching people, trying to
Yeah.
love. I'm going to serve myself,
Yeah.
because there's nothing after this. I am here now.
Yeah.
You are going to be my object that I'm going to capitalize on. And I really think that way. Yeah.
You've kind of answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. Would a purely biopsychosocial explanation for your transformation, lacking the spiritual component, would that be sufficient for you?
No.
No, for all the reasons you just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, because I do believe we have choice. And even when we live downtown and we see a lot of people, and I have a friend who's a physician, and he's told me, even people completely out of their minds can snap into reality and deal with you. And because of that, I think that if a psychosocial explanation like my upbringing, lack of serotonin was proven, I would still cling to what I have experienced.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, then we would come back to those results.
Okay. You've used metaphors or expressions like I'm a fucker, I'm demented in my flesh. Do you prefer these raw, visceral, or more spiritual terms over the medical ones like sociopathy, narcissism when describing yourself?
Yeah, because I think sociopathy and psychopathy and narcissism are the fruit of people being fuckers. I don't think that they are fuckers because they're those things. And I know that's a weird way to say it.
Can you go into a bit more detail about that?
I say fucker because if I say, well, I'm a sociopath.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then okay. And if someone's like, okay, you're a sociopath, I'm like, I'm going to fuck you up. And you're not going to know it, you see. You're embracing something that I know.
Yeah.
And so that's how my mind works.
Okay.
So I can't use a title like that to couch what I really am when the rubber meets the road, like a judge in a court here on earth would do. If they were to reveal my heart, the intents of my mind, and my actions, they would say, in non-legal terms, you're a fucker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just want to get to the core of it and not couch it in anything. So you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
If you want me to leave my mystical faith that isn't real, if you really want that. Now, you and I talking, I kind of look like a very dangerous person, and I kind of put that off anyway. But in him, I'm nothing but that. Anybody who knows me socially knows I'm not, and, well, you've been with that.
I know you now.
Yeah. And I'm not like this too much because I've changed.
Yeah. How much has religious scripture helped you to understand the nature of good and evil?
Can we go above 100%?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As far as you want.
10,000%.
Okay.
And that's a final thing I'd like to make relative to the faith. These expressions of roadside experience, I'm changed, Jesus loves me, I don't need to change.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. The scripture, ancient scripture shows you have to learn what God expects of you if you want to follow that. Unless you learn it and you never know it, you're going to continue to do what the flesh does. Yeah. So it's invaluable that people learn what that says in kindness and love, being fulfilled, by the way. It's done. It's all over. This is what has happened. And so therefore, learn what God really wants from you. And we know what he wants from us by the illustrations of Jesus, his life. What did he do? So that's when you learn what he did, you embrace that, and it's vital to growing. I have countless people over the past 2 decades who have had the Jesus experience, roadside experience. They went to a concert, they were emotionally charged and were saved, and they go off, and a year later you see them, being an ass as usual. It's from a lack of learning what God wants you to know.
Okay. Today, what stage do you think you're at in your life journey? Have you reached an end point, or is it ongoing?
Oh, ongoing, constantly, never ending. And that is overwhelming to people because we typically see, how long is this going to take? And when will I be completely free? I will never be free of what I am in my flesh because I'm in my flesh. So I have to see it as a long distance run, and I'm probably the first 100 yards in on a 2-miler. I have so much growing to do, and it comes by experience, learning what God's expectations are for me, and that spiritual influence on my heart.
Okay. I can't think of a better place to finish. So Shawn,
hey,
thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks.
So, if you made it to the end of our interview, thank you for watching, and please leave your comments in the YouTube comments section below, good, bad, or otherwise. Please also subscribe to this channel and follow the playlist Sociopathy and Option Undiscovered, which contains related videos about reforming predators. Shawn McCraney shows how someone who does not care for other people can come to care. If that can happen for Shawn, it can happen to almost anyone. He's living proof that psychopathy, or at least its milder forms of sociopathy or malignant narcissism, need not be permanent. The fact that it's possible for human predators to be redeemed is what can save the human race. Our societies are dominated and led by predators in all walks of life, be it business, politics, or religion. It's only by understanding how people like Shawn instinctively think, feel, and approach the world that we can work to reform and restrain those authoritarian and predatory forces. Shawn and I are currently working on a book that will transcribe all of our interviews, along with written commentary from researchers and clinicians from the field of psychopathy, authoritarian groups, and religion. We still don't have an exact explanation for what happened to Shawn. Is Shawn simply another person at the tail end of sociopathy, where the predatory traits diminish in intensity? If so, what explains his development of effective empathy? What role did his medication, specifically Prozac, play in reducing his predatory urges? Why was he first able to experience unconditional love for his children? Was his religious epiphany an awe and fervor experience that instilled in him a pseudo-personality overlaying his previously disordered personality? How do the purported metaphysical forces intersect with the physical reality of his condition? And, last but not least, would Shawn actually revert to the predator he once was if he lost his belief in God? If you would like to be involved, please reach out to me via the email in the video description. Thank you for watching.